Hey there, it's Ubi, and we're back for a video where I'm going to go over the process I have for shaping the tone that I get on my live streams and in my recordings through a bunch of free, or at the time I got them free, plugins that allow me to play everything digital and get a pretty good, at least in my opinion, sound. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at what I had set up for the live setup first. And we'll take a look at what we had set up for the Kona over there, which is a completely over-engineered chain that I don't need now that we've got the telly. And then we're going to go over the process that I have for shaping the telly. We're going to look at some tone shaping. We're going to look at some gain staging. We're going to look at a couple of plugins on top of our amp and cab sim. And we'll tie it all together with some MIDI controls so that I can control everything while I'm live via a touch app on my phone. So that's what we've got coming up. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so this is my old setup in Cantabile Lite that I was using to get the Kona to sound like a actual electric guitar that has kind of bite to it, kind of a snarl and growl to it. But also could give me some cleaner tones and the like. Basically, I wanted it to sound like a guitar that you would run, say, the type of genre that I want, which is 80s glam rock, hair metal, maybe a bit of sleaze and some thrash in there. That's kind of my wheelhouse of what I play or would like to play. Now, this doesn't seem like it's much. It looks like it's only 4 things in here. Only thing is these 2 are racks. So originally, what we have here is I have Chrome, my actual Chrome browser, which I use in a different chain. But I have my my digital input, which is right now a Rocksmith cable, but later on, once I get everything all sorted properly, a true interface that will actually have a good noise floor, better signal to noise ratio. But right now, it's just a cable from Rocksmith. It comes in on this chain here, which it's set up to pull from my ASIO setup in here, which in this case it's on port number 4 in my ASIO, and I'm only pulling the right channel from it because I'm monoing it, and there is other reasons for that later on, but I'm using a mono signal for this. So that comes in, and I bring it into what I call the guitar tamer. Now the Kona had that piezo pickup, so I actually have it separating out on this rack here, the low end, the mid, and the high using TDR Nova, which is a free plugin that is a dynamic EQ. And each one of these, I'm pulling only certain aspects. So I'm pulling the low end there, pulling the mid here, and pulling some of the mid and the highs on this chain here. And each one of these, we go through different noise suppression because there was different amounts of noise on each one of these, different compressors. I've even on one of these, I'm bypassing my compressor, and then I'm using tone shaping EQ in here for each one of these to do things like try to actually rescue some of the low end that the piezo didn't pick up, taming the shrill, really bright, brittle high end, and trying to get a good mid in there so that it could have a good tone. Now this is over-engineered out the wazoo to try to get an acoustic electric to sound like an electric. So from there, it would go into a secondary compressor so that we can make sure that everything is leveled out, all those different levels that I created with those different chains, make sure that everything gets blended in evenly. And then we would go into the guitar rack, which again is pretty over-engineered. I have a Saturator plugin first to try to get some more thickness out of the tone. We're using Amplitude 5. But we're using Amplitude 5 Custom Shop, which is the free version, so it didn't allow for custom IRs. So we were bypassing the cab sim in Amplitude and instead going into Ignite's NADIR, which is a plugin that allows me to use individual IRs for the cabinet. From there, we were splitting it out and going into the one version of it without any changing anymore was moving on, and I was splitting a side chain off of it to go into what I call my shimmer box, where I was adding a delay, a chorus, a reverb, a little bit of phaser for a little bit of texturing to try to give it a little less of a sterile digital feel and a little bit more of an analog feel. And so those two are going back into a mixer, which would allow me to add in that shimmer effect as just a partial of it, with about 25% wet on that. And then that whole thing would go back out into a final EQ where I would do some final tone shaping, a little bit of mastering to it, and then that would go out. Super over-engineered, really heavy. The only reason why it works with no latency is I have a computer that was originally created to be a really beefy gaming computer and a development computer. So because of that, I'm able to run that whole chain, as heavy as it is on all of that processing, at near real time. But we don't need all this anymore because we have the Telecaster. So what we'll do is we're going to start with a completely clean slate, and we're going to build a audio chain specifically built for our Telecaster. Okay, so we've set a new song. The Cantabile Lite calls each individual chain that you set up as a song. So we've set up a new song here. And first thing I'm going to do is I don't use the on-screen keyboard, so we're going to move that out of our way down here where we don't need it. So eventually we will be using the MIDI input here to take some software MIDI commands so that we can control this entire layout. Then, of course, I have the Chrome in, which I will also weave into this chain. And then, obviously, our direct input. So the first thing that we want to do, since I'm on that Rocksmith cable, is we need to deal with the noise that is coming in. Now, I use a plugin called Noise Suppression. It's from Vadim Taranov. And it works really well for me. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to take the Telecaster, and I'm going to turn the volume up on it. There we go. And then we're going to take our input and send it straight to our speakers. So, and then we're going to actually turn on everything so you can hear it right there. We've got noise. Now that's RF noise that I'm getting off of that Rocksmith cable. So that's the tele, as you can hear. We're playing it through the interface here. But you can hear that noise that we have in there. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is we're going to run this into the noise suppression. And just on the bare minimum, you can already hear the noise has come down a lot. So what I'll do is I will try to dial in the lowest threshold and the lowest amount of drop that I can get so that I don't really hear the noise. Now the problem is, as good as it is, you still hear it in the signal there. So, and unfortunately, it doesn't really seem to matter how much we really try to shape it in there. We don't really, it's really hard to get that signal out, or that all that noise out of the actual played signal, because it's, it's part of that waveform. So we will, unfortunately, until I can get my DI fixed, we will just have to live with a little bit of that noise in there. So the next thing I like to do here, now that I've got that in place, is I like to check my gain staging. What I would like to do is wail on the guitar as kind of as hard as we can. And make sure that our input is not clipping too much. Kind of want to get it right up on that edge. So this is the beginning of our gain staging. I have no control over the Rocksmith cable's gain, so that is a downside of it. Once I get on the actual interface, it has gain control, so I can actually dial in the interface to get right up on that edge of breakup and bring it back just a little bit so that we don't clip, so that we've got the fullest signal that we can into our container here. And then from there, we will do the same type of adjustments I just did there, so that we make sure that once it actually hits the amp, it's hitting the amp as hard as it can without being broken up. Now, another thing that happens is when I click on each individual thing in here, you'll see another meter down here. This is the output for this. So what I can do is make sure that I don't have any particular effect that is adding or taking way too much of my gain. Looks pretty good to me there. We're also out of tune, but we'll fix that in a bit. So, step one, got as much noise suppression on it as we can without destroying our signal. So the next step that I like to do is, at this point, we want to add a little bit of saturation. We're going to fatten up the signal just a little bit before we hit the amp, so that it hits the amp hard. Now, I actually have a saturation plugin, MSaturator, which is from Melda Production. They have a large line of free and paid plugins. They have a massive amount of really good stuff in there. This is a saturator I definitely don't mind using from them. So we're going to add that into our chain here. And basically all I'm looking to do with this is just give it a little bit more saturation. So what I'm going to do is I like to give it about 3 or 4. So we'll give it about a 4 decibel soft saturation to it. Pushing right up on that output. There we go. So we've added a little bit of saturation to it, and so the next thing that we'll do is, now we're ready to drop it into our actual amp sim. Now I was able to get a hold of TH-U Essentials when Overloud was running a special to allow them, or they were literally doing a free. Basically, they gave away the Essentials for free. So I use TH-U as my amp and cab sim because it has some pretty good sims inside of it for amplifiers. They got one that models the Fender Twin 1965. They have a progressive model that's their own original. This one I use a lot of, which is modeled off of the JCM 800, which is getting that 80s tone. They have a Soldano model, and then they also have their rig player, which is similar to Tonex, which allows other people to come up with pre-built models and those sort of things. And I use one out of there that models the PV6505 as well in my tones. So I have a list of tones in here that I've already got preset. I've got 9 of them currently. So we've got a already pre-built kind of a hair metal tone. So which already sounds pretty good just out of the box. And then we have the tone that I have built off of their progressive tone, which is a more modern metal tone. And then I've got the, like I said, that PV6505. A lot of punch. I actually like that one quite a bit. And then I've got my ambience tone, which I use when I'm doing the solos online. Really nice, kind of a clean ambient tone. Unfortunately, you can hear, if you listen in there, it sounds like I've got a little bit of dirt on the channel. That's actually that RF interference you're hearing. This is actually a clean tone. If I run a recorded raw DI through it, it's completely clean. So then I was playing around and was trying to come up with a sound that's similar to the Rockman. So and so that one is coming out of that Fender Twin Verb. So I have basically the same type setup as the Rockman, but through the JCM 800 as well. Which actually, I kind of like this as my 80s tone. Got that thickness that I like to it. And then I have there was a tone that somebody had come up with that is similar to the cleans used by Guns N' Roses on Slash used on Use Your Illusion 2. So it's just a little bit of EQ shaping on it. Again, you can hear that RF noise in the back of the signal there. But so these tones are all set up, and I will actually set up my the MIDI to allow me to switch between these tones. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up here. I'm going to run the MIDI input into that, and we are going to set that into channel 1, which I have set up on a separate application, which should, in theory, if I do have everything set up correctly, allow me to switch between each of these tones by button. So yeah, see that? Jump to Hair Metal 1, metal tones, the rig rhythm, the rig lead, my ambience tone. So that is all set up. That's all set up in a separate program. I have a software MIDI, which emulates a MIDI hardware, and then I have another application that allows me to switch these via a touch on my phone. So it allows me to easily switch between each one of these tones in here when I'm ready to switch to them, which we'll deal with. Which I just showed you happening there. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a burden for me to deal with that and also deal with driving the mouse here. So we will go with manually switching things. But so that's our change so far. We're going into the noise suppression, which again, you can hear we still have a bit of that noise on the line once we are pushing some gain through it. So what we can do is we can come back in here and dial that down just a bit more. Dial the threshold in a little bit better. Go. So that's got that part of the chain plugged in. Okay, now one of the things that you can also do at this point, now that we have the TH-U set up, this is something that TH-U specifically has. You could do something kind of similar in Amplitube if you're using Amplitube 5CS, but TH-U specifically has a input level adjustment screen where it will listen to your guitar and tell you what how the gain and the input is once it hits TH-U. So as you can see, we're jumping right into the OK. If it was too low, it will tell you to raise your input. If it's too high, it's up in the red there. It'll tell you to lower that input down. But this is just a better visualizer of what our input is over these where we can see if it's clipping or not. This one's just a better a better visual, especially with the color coding. Maybe a little easier to tell if you're actually set up correctly or not. So the next step I like to do is out of the amp and cab is I like to do some EQ shaping on it. Now again, I love TDR Nova for my EQ because it's a dynamic EQ. So we're gonna put that into our input, send that out to our output there, and we're gonna pull it up. So right now we're flat. It's got a flat response for the default setting. Sounds exactly the same because the EQ is flat. So what we're going to do is we are going to set this up specifically for the Tele here. Now the Tele has this particular Tele has a ridiculously hot bridge in it, especially for a single coil and for a budget guitar. So we definitely need to do a lot of shaping to make sure that it doesn't end up too muddy and that it has the mids boosted at the right amount where we get the right a bite, and that the highs, because this is a single coil rather than humbucker, don't give us a little bit too much of a fizz to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to cut our lows at about the... I'm going to turn all these other ones off. So we're going to work on this first one here. We're going to cut our lows at about, I'd say about 100 hertz is where we're going to dial that in there. So we'll do 100, and we're going to drop that down somewhere about 4 or so. So let's start with that. We'll make sure that we don't get too much of the low end knocked out of there so we lose our chugs there. Okay, so we're going to move over to the second one. And now here we're going to boost our mids a bit. So we're going to jump up to about 800 or so. And we're going to give it a little bit of a boost here. About, let's say about 2 dB for now. So I just want to make sure we got that articulation in there. We want to make sure it's nice and clear so that we don't have a lot of mud in there. I could clearly hear the chord changes playing and that sort of thing. So, and now we're going to tame the highs just a little bit. It does get a little frizzy or so. So we're going to jump up to about, say, 6,000. And we're going to drop it down about 3 dB or so. So to give us a kind of a hump. Feels like we're losing a little bit too much of our high end off that, so we're going to bring that back up to about 1.5. It's much better. So that's actually not. We're trying to tame a little bit of the high end, but we don't want to take it out completely. So we've got that in there, and yeah, so that should shape us up pretty good for our EQ. Now the next step is we need to put in some compression. So I have a couple of them, but I've recently started using TDR's compressor, which they have a free one. And I'm going to butcher the name for it, I guarantee it. It's Kotelnikov, something along those lines. I'll put a link down in the description so that you can actually figure out what the heck I'm talking about there. So we're going to use that for our compressor. And we're going to set it up this way. So I want to keep kind of a natural dynamics, but it does need compression into it. So we're going to go with, I think we're going to keep it at about a 2-to-1 compression ratio. The attack, we're going to put it about medium. So I think we're going to go about 10 milliseconds. And release, I kind of want to give it a fast release. So I think we're going to go with 50 there. I think that's about what I want for that. So let's play the telly through that and see what it sounds like. Sometimes we actually can play it right. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes we get it right. As you can tell, I don't edit my playing while we're doing these, because why? I mean, I am the player that I am. There's no point in trying to do anything other than being who I am. I need to bring that threshold up some so that it's actually activating. Let's go with about 15 dB or so. Yeah, a little higher. Let's go about 20. 30 actually. And 25. Lower technically, but that works, but we're losing a little bit out of it, so we're going to have to push in a little bit of makeup gain. More. And then we need to boost the output just a touch so that it's much better. Much better. So that gets our compression down in where I want it. And yeah, I think things are shaping up really good. It's time for us to add in what I would consider the secret sauce for my guitar chain. One of the biggest problems with going with an all-digital chain is the fact that it's all digital. It's kind of a sterile feel to it. We lose a lot of those transients. We lose a lot of the harmonics that you get from using like a warm tube amp and from miking and from room dynamics and those sort of things. So what we do to fix that is we add a little bit of saturation. Now I have another saturation, a plugin, excuse me, I have a tape saturation plugin that I like to use, which is called Chow Tape Model. Drop that in there. That to there. And we're going to bring it up and we're going to try to get that dialed in. So For this, I'm going to really subtle on it. It's kind of what we want. So, a little bit of the flutter to give it just a little bit of dynamics. And then added just a bit more saturation, just a tiny bit more of the drive to it. And we will see what that sounds like when we play it, see if it gives it kind of a more full analog sound. Yeah. Feels a little thicker. Definitely feels thicker to me. So the big thing with that is it gives it just a little bit more thickness to it, just to try to, especially with the flutter, to give it just a little bit more of a natural feel to it. Less of a sterile, pure digital feel to it, to give it a little bit more of that taste of an analog feel. That it's very important in especially the genres that I play in. Now, after that, we will go ahead and sort everything up here. This continues to expand as you add things, so it can go as far over to the side as you want. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add in some effects. So my rhythm parts that I have set up for my tones are all dry. I don't have any effects on top of them. Sometimes I want to give a little bit of effects into those. And also the lead parts that I've built and that ambient tone, those are heavily affected back in the amp and cab sim. So I want to make sure not to layer additional effects on top of them. Or, you know, I might want to layer additional effects on top of them and to really give it a spacey, wonky feel. So I use a delay, a reverb, and a chorus as my effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a delay, a reverb, and a chorus. So I use MDelay from the Melda Productions, and then I use chorus from Kilohearts, KHS chorus. Hopefully it'll load up frame just fine there. And finally, for reverb, I use KHS's reverb also. So those are my effects that I use. Now there are plenty of good effects out there that one can use. These just are the ones that I personally use. So we're going to run that through there, and we're going to run our to there and that to there. So right now everybody is on, so we should have a very shimmery effect. Oh yeah, I can already hear it when I turn up the tone here. That's pure chaos, but that's okay because these are all set as default. Now, one of the things that I do in the way that I have everything set up is that these guys are going to be toggleable via our MIDI that we have back over here. So I'm going to go ahead and run MIDI lines into each one of them as well. Now, MIDI controls can be taught, especially through Cantabile Lite. I could go into here and have each one of the knobs and selectors on this. These can all be taught various MIDI signals to be input to them, which is great if you have a MIDI controller that has things like dials and those sort of things to make it easier for you to actually dial in the settings on here. You can actually make it kind of mimic an actual pedal. I don't have that. I only have the ability to hit a button to change things. So what I have is I have it set up so that I can turn them on and off inside of another program called Touch Portal. Now, this is the one where I was telling you about that I'm sending MIDI signals out, And this is my board here set up. Some of these buttons don't do anything with this setup. For example, Chug Boost here is going bye-bye because that was something that was used in the Kona days. This is also set up so that this can be run during my live session. This program is free. There is a free touch portal, works on Android and iOS. The free version gives you, I believe, 2, maybe 3 of these pages you can use. I actually paid for the free version. It's a single lifetime cost, which allows me to create unlimited pages. So I have a lot of stuff set in for this across all my streaming and game playing and all that sort of stuff. So what I have inside of here is I have a delay, chorus, and reverb button here that allows me to turn these on and off. And so I'm sending on channel 9 because these are 0 based. So channel 10 in here, so I'm sending on channel 9. I'm sending a 1 for off and a 0 for on, which means 1, what it receives is 1 for on and 2 for off. And this happens on all 3 of these. So channel 9 is my delay. My chorus goes out on 11, which means it's channel 10 inside of Cantabile. And my reverb is channel 11. So 9, 10, and 11 are my delay, chorus, and reverbs here. So I'm sending those out into here. So what I need to do for the delay is I need to go into the delay and tell it we're listening on 9. And I can tell this is correct by monitoring it. And when I hit the delay button, I see absolutely nothing, which means I may be wrong. This actually might be 11. It may be +1. These throw me off every time I go to set these up. Yeah, so I have that wrong. So channel 11 is my delay, channel 12 is chorus, and channel 13 is reverb. But as you can see, I'm sending it 1s and 2s. The data that's coming in here is 1s and 2s. So what I want to do for this is, the other thing that you can do other than programming each one of these things is instead you can make individual snapshots that Cantabile knows about. And you can tell it when you're receiving a MIDI program change, you can either forward that to the plugin or you can tell it to switch the presets inside of Cantabile Lite. So you'll notice here we're on 2. So we're switching between snapshots 1 and 2. So on snapshot 1, it's pretty simple. I simply go in here and turn this off. So I bypass it. So snapshot 1 is bypass. And then on snapshot 2 is where we're actually going to use our delay. So for the delay, I like using a tape delay with a classic mode. I like the delay to be a little faster, but I prefer to use a sync rather than using the actual delay. And I like to run it as a dotted 8th note. So dotted 8th note for the actual delay. I like it to be a little, there we go, a little less, and add a touch of saturation to that. So I'm going to bypass these others, so we're only hearing the delay right now since we don't have those dialed in. And I think that actually is a tone that has delay on it already. That's a little too much. All right, so we're going to bring the feedback down. It's still a little too much there. There we go. There we go. I like the way that's dialed in there. So that's our delay. So we'll turn it off. I actually have those backwards now that I look at it. So that's not going to hurt anything. We can just recode it up in here. Go. So that's, no, it's still backwards. problem. We'll just switch the state that we're sending. There we go. Okay, delay is on, delay is off. There we go. Cool. All right, so we always set up the same thing with all the other things. So for the chorus, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to turn the chorus off on 1, and on 2 it'll be on. And 2 here, I actually like this to be very subtle when I'm doing the chorus. So that down, bring this out. Little bit of a shimmer on top of it so that it doesn't sound like we've got like an auto wah going. Deal. Let's go make that change so that tell it that we want to change our presets. And let's go in here, chorus. We're sending 1 when we're turning it off. That and that. So now then, chorus should be on, chorus should be off. There we go. Chorus off, chorus on. Yep, perfect. Excellent. All right, so we'll shut that down for now. And then we'll do the same thing, we'll dial in our reverb. So, same thing here, we got snapshots 1 and 2. Snapshot 1, reverb's off. Snapshot 2, reverb will be on. Go in here, we're going to tell it we want to switch presets. All right. A little bigger than I like. A little less wide. We got some nice little reverb to it. All right, I'm going to pop in and make our change for that as well, since I've changed those up. So we're sending it 1 and 2 for on and off. So reverb is on, reverb is off. Perfect. So on, off. Good. Delay, chorus, reverb, all of them on. Full shimmer. Chorus off. So this is just delay and reverb, kind of your standard 80s rock. And yeah, we are cooking with gas now. So there we go. That gets everything all tied in. I've got the telly kind of hooked up for the way I want it to be for my live streams. And we look at the save button. So we save what I call telly chain in Cantabile, and that is it. Hopefully you'll pop into my live streams and check it out when I go and play this for real for everybody. So there you go. That is the updated audio chain for the Telecaster. Hopefully that was entertaining to you. Maybe you learned something from it. Comment in the comments down below. Tell me about your chain. If you're running all digital, or if you've got questions about digital, pop in down there, ask them, see if we can get enough questions together. Maybe I'll do a Q&A session over digital chains, and we'll talk about it. So if you got anything out of this, if this made you smile, if it made you think, if it gave you some inspiration, if it taught you something, think about going down there and hitting that like button for me. And if you'd like to see more of this, hit that subscribe button too. If that's your thing, I would love to give you more content. Also, I'd love for you to join us on a live stream. We normally stream Monday and Thursdays, about noon roughly on Central Time. We'll do about an hour of either recording or playing some solos or some backing track. Would love for you to join me and interact. And I'd like to talk to you about guitars, life, anything at all. But until next time, thank you for joining me on this journey of my personal guitar journey, and reminding you, embrace the suck. Even if you don't feel like you've got the skills, if you don't have the equipment, don't use those excuses. Take what you got, make some music, put it out there on the internet, and more importantly, tag me when you do, because I want to join in your guitar journey too. So we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.